if anything were to happen to Kestra. And so she tells Picard, I'm not as brave as I used to be. And he says, well, that means you're getting wiser. and I did think about that too, how like she's already lost one child, and not even like in a violent attack or like because her son was like on a ship in Starfleet. He died from a disease. But then to think how like, what if Picard is there and he brings some kind of trouble to their doorstep and their daughter dies from it, like that. It'd be too much to bear for any parent to lose that much. So, next scene is we're back on La Sirena. There is a ship. We know it's Narek, of course. And, of course, we as the audience know how he's following them. But he's basically just hanging on the edge of their sensor range. And then Agnes is like, look, I wish I could be that fun person who says, let's go hide on that comet, when it just turns out to be a Gormagander. I'm having trouble saying these fake names. Gormagander. That's another little Easter egg. It's a nod to an episode of Discovery. Season 1, Episode 7, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. Harry Mudd, played by Rainn Wilson, hides inside a Gormagander, which is a space whale. Which is, yes, that's right, Rainn Wilson. He plays Harry Mudd in Discovery.
And space whales.
Yes, space whales, exactly. He hides inside a space whale, and when Discovery beams the whale aboard, he explodes out of it. So they have appeared in other versions of Trek, so that's a reference to that. She asked the crew, like, hey, do you guys really want to go to Nepenthe? And they're like, we kind of have to go to Nepenthe. We have to get Picard and Soji. And Agnes is like, I just want to go home. And so why can't someone else, deal with this? Why do I have to deal with it? And Raffi's like, you were so eager to find the synth when you first came on board in your little blue coat. And now, as we're getting closer, it's like you don't want to find her. Like, what's going on?
I love that she's just like, in your cute little blue coat.
Yes. That cracked me up, too.
Sassy Raffi.
Yeah, she is so sassy. I really enjoy Raffi. I enjoy Michelle Hurd's portrayal of her in this show. I think it's great. And then Rios basically tells her, listen, Picard's a paying client and you're just along for the ride. So you can't tell me like where we can go and stuff. I have to, go where the money is. And so then Raffi's like, she says to Agnes, come with Auntie Raffi. Auntie Raffi will hook you up with whatever you need. Now,
I thought that meant that she was going to give her some of her, vape pen or some of her wine or something. And then it was the cake.
I know. Well, I think that Raffi had that absolute same intention. Mm-hmm. I think you're 100% right. I think she was ready, like, do you want to smoke a blunt together? Like, is that what you want to do? And then Agnes is like, can I have cake? Mm-hmm. And, like, I think this is what I love about Michelle Hurd. It's like she just pauses for, like, a beat as, like, oh, you just want cake. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
She's like, yes, absolutely, cake. And I think in that moment, she just shifts, like, where her mind is. She doesn't want drugs. She just wants sugar. Got it.
I want some cake.
I would eat cake too. Like we discussed in detail earlier, the red velvet cake.
I thought we agreed that we're moving on from the cake.
We are, but
earlier we moved on from the cake, but then we came back around to the cake. But now we're trying to veer off.
And now I want cake again.
Yeah,
it's that the cake is like it's just always there. The cake
but it's not
is like,
here, so that's
the cake
why. That's
is
why.
Like Narek.
The cake is
that
a
it's
lie.
Just on the edge of your sensor range, and every time you try to escape it, it just comes back.
The cake is on the edge of my periphery.
That's it. The cake is just like hovering there. Like, wait, is that cake?
Side note, did you notice that every time Rios lights a cigar or puts a cigar in his mouth, it gets more and more girthy.
Yes. What's that about?
Like the first couple of times, it was like a Swisher Sweet, like a nice, like a thin cigar.
And now it's like a big old Cuban, like a big Havana.
Oh, I don't know what it was in this episode, man. I don't know how he put his mouth around that thing.
It's like a tree trunk now. It's like
It really was.
Oh boy, it's a G-rated show, everybody. So.
Sorry for saying the word girthy.
No, that's okay. It's all right. Sometimes things are just girthy. You can say it. It's all right. So,
I mean, there are other things that I could say, but I'm not going to say because
it's a G show. Yes. The show is rated G. We're trying to keep it family friendly.
G for girthy.
G. Oh my god. Our show is rated G for girthy.
I like how you leaned into that one.
I'm sorry once again.
Earthy show. No, it's fine. It's
amazing. Okay.
Alrighty. Back on Nepenthe. Riker is cooking outside of his outdoor wood oven, which is very cool looking. Picard, of course, will not tell him what the mission is. This is where Riker talks about how the soil is very regenerative, and that's why they moved there. Everything grows. He got these tomatoes. He's got Andarian basil. He's got all this stuff. So he's like, all right, you won't tell me what the mission is. Let me see if I can guess what's going on. You told me about the anti-cloaking. That means Romulans. Your anxiety is through the roof. That means Tal Shiar. And he's like, you're not the one who's being chased. It's Soji. And he's like, she's an android because I would recognize that head tilt anywhere. And there was a quick little scene where Kestra and Soji came out and Kestra said, I'm going to take her to the garden. And Soji did do that very Data-like head tilt and her eyes got a little wider. But and Riker knew right away.
She hadn't done that so far. So is it because it's been confirmed to her that she is a synth android that now, like, her programming doesn't have to make her superhuman?
I mean, maybe. I mean, she wasn't activated before. She's only just become activated. And she's also, remember, she said she's never eaten, like, a real tomato.
Yeah.
She said everything has been replicated. So maybe she was just, like, kind of taking it all in. Like, these are, like, raw ingredients that are being cooked to become food.
Speaking of eating raw tomatoes, I have never seen anyone just take a bite out of a tomato like that, except for people in my family.
I do that.
Oh, my wife loves tomatoes. Okay. I can't stand it.
Because I honestly, I've not ever seen other people do it, but my mom used to grow tomatoes, and I remember her eating them like apples, and I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I thought that...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I was just trying to go back to the head tilt. I thought the head tilt was really clunky. Maybe I missed it. You know what I mean? But I just thought it was real clunky, and the only reason it was put in there is so Riker can have this moment of, like, Sherlock Holmes just putting everything together, kind of ridiculously. Didn't really get it, but if it kind of helps move the plot along, then I understand it.
Yeah, I really think it's just there for Riker to go, oh, she's clearly Data's kid because she tilts her head the same way. I mean, that's...
Why was it the first time we've seen it, though? Like, I understand you're saying because she's activated now, but...
Because it's fan service the episode, that's why.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean,
right.
It's
Thank
the
you
best
for saying that so I didn't have to say
it. I mean, this episode is definitely fan service. I mean, you talk about fan favorites of, like, Riker and Troy and how much I bet there are thousands, if not more, fan fiction stories of Riker and Troy. Some of them are G and some of them are not G, I bet, like, of their relationship and stuff. So, like, to see them on screen together again and they're still married, and they still love each other, and he still calls her Imzadi, like, it's fan service the episode, and that's what the head tilt. I don't disagree that it's clunky. I don't. I just, it's there because it's there. And that's not a very good answer, but it's the best one I got for you.
I think you're 100% right. That's the writers probably just was like, yeah, people are going to question it, and they're just going to move on, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
so then,
called hand waving. You just hand wave it away.
It's true. It's true. You didn't see anything.
Doesn't look like anything to me. Oh wait, that's a different.
Oh, that's
robot.
Westworld. It's another property. Also robots.
Yeah.
Also a good show.
Yes. Also robots that have skin and bones and stuff.
Yes, true. And this is that scene where Riker says, "This is classic Picard arrogance. Only you get to know the whole picture." And he's like, "Of course, nobody else gets to know. Only you." And he says, "That works on the bridge of the Enterprise, but it doesn't work when you're dealing with basically a teenager." And Soji is. I guess she's a teenager, but she's also 3 years old. So I think Riker calling her a teenager is probably like the best, most accurate, description of her.
Yeah, because I was thinking, oh, she's 3, but also even though she's only been around for 3 years, she's lived this adult life, and then now she's got all of these different emotions going through her because she doesn't know who she is. And that's like whenever you're a teenager and you're just kind of got all these hormones and there's all this stuff going on. You've got school, you've got boys, you've got girls, whatever, and all that stuff is confusing you, and that's how she is now. So it's definitely like she's an angsty teenager.
Yeah.
Even though she's supposed to be a little older. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. She's going through a self-discovery, which is what teenagers do, right? They go through a self-discovery. They go through an experimentation phase and finding out who they are, what they like, who they like. And that's where Soji is. She thought she was this person, and now she's discovering she's not that person. She's a different person, and now she needs to figure herself out. And, Picard's like, Riker says to Picard, you may not be up to the task. And Picard's like, yeah, maybe I'm not. And so then Riker's like, you see, that's what you need, baby steps. So, the fact that he can admit I may not be up to this task, I think for Riker is you see, you have to let go of that arrogance. You have to let go of that best, because you don't know best. You don't have kids. Riker has kids. He knows, at least to a degree, better than Picard how to deal with kids.
Right.
So, and then we get to this scene where we did kind of talk about this a bit earlier with Deanna and Soji in the garden, how Deanna has a therapy session with her. But this is where we really also learn what happened to Thad, their older son. He had a rare disease called Mandaxic neurosclerosis, which is made up for the show, of course. Basically, you have to take the infected cells, because it's a silicon-based disease. You have to take the infected cells, you have to cultivate them in an active positronic matrix. Well, ever since the synth attack on Mars, guess what? No more active positronic matrices, and no one's allowed to make them. So they really did not have a way to save their child. And so their son passed away. And so Deanna tells Soji, you see that real isn't always better. Because if they had had access to an active positronic brain, they could have saved their son. And it's quite sad that how this attack has affected so many people in different ways. Of course, people who lost their lives in the attack, or family of people, etc. But then you've got people like Riker and Troy who were not directly connected to that, but they've also now experienced a loss because of it. And I found this episode this moment quite sad. Because then Soji opens up about how Narek betrayed her trust, how, she was vulnerable and open with him, and then he just used her and then tried to kill her. And then, of course, we get that scene where Picard says, kind of a sarcastic comment, and then Soji pushes him, and Deanna's like, you had that coming. And then she tells Picard, let us help you. Let us try to, help you figure this out.
What is it with Picard and getting shoved in gardens and stuff? I mean, him and his brother